Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's devotional. Our thought today is going to come from Revelation chapter 4, the throne in heaven. This is really the beginning of the vision for John of the things going on in heaven. Remember, back in chapter 1, John was in the Spirit. He received the vision of the Lord, and then starting in chapter 2 and chapter 3, you've got the Lord and his things he needed to say to the seven churches of Asia. And then starting in verse 1 of chapter 4 is kind of the beginning of this vision of behind the scenes in heaven, so to speak. In fact, in verse 1 it says, "After these things I looked, behold, a door standing open in heaven. And the first voice which I heard was like a trumpet speaking with me, saying, Come up here, and I will show you things which must take place after this. Immediately I was in the Spirit, and behold, a throne set in heaven, and one sat on the throne." I think it's interesting that immediately following the address from Jesus to the seven churches of Asia, the very first scene that is given in this vision to John is of the throne in heaven. There is a door that is open. It's almost like John's being invited to kind of receive a glimpse of what heaven is like. Keep in mind, this is very symbolic. Obviously, there's not a physical aspect. There's not anything physical in heaven. But John's describing to us the best that he can what he's being shown. And so, starting in verse 3, he who sat there was like, and these similes that we see was like as, or like he who sat there talking about Jehovah was like a jasper and a sardius stone in appearance. There was a rainbow around the throne in appearance like an emerald. And around the throne were 24 thrones, and on the thrones I saw 24 elders sitting, clothed in white robes, and they had crowns of gold on their head. And obviously, there's quite a bit of things that we could break down from chapter 4. And a while back, maybe a year or so ago, we did actually break down some of this stuff in one of our, I think it was in a daily devotional. But what I want to focus on is verse 5. "From the throne proceeded lightnings, thunderings, and voices. 7 lamps of fire were burning before the Lord, which are the 7 spirits of God. Before the throne there was a sea of glass like crystal, and in the midst of the throne and around the throne were 4 living creatures, full of eyes in front and in back." And then in verse 9 and 10, you've got the 24 elders and the 4 living creatures. They worship him who lives forever. They cast their thrones before the throne, or their crowns before the throne, saying, "You are worthy, O Lord, to receive glory and honor and power, for you created all things, and by your will they exist and were created." The reminder for us, first of all, just the imagining of what this scene must have looked like for John, being able to be given this glimpse of something going on, of this throne scene in heaven. Sorry, I got something in my eye. And then in verse 5, to see this throne of the Almighty, the creator of all things, and have lightnings and thunderings and voices proceeding from the throne. And it makes me wonder about all of the activity that is happening in heaven. The fact that the creator of the universe and sustainer of all things is so active. We have other elements that we can include in this, like Jacob's ladder, the vision Jacob, or the dream Jacob had regarding a ladder going up, and there were angels going up and down on the ladder from heaven, which all reminds us that God is still very active, certainly active in the Old Testament and in the New Testament, but even still today, there's a lot of activity taking place, even though we have we are unable to observe that activity. And it just reminds us that when we pray, and we ask God to help us. It's a reminder for us that when we bow before God, that we're bowing before the creator of all things. And this is why the Hebrew writer says starting in verse 14, Jesus, of course, is our high priest. Is seeing that we have a great high priest who has passed through the heavens, Jesus, the Son of God, let us hold fast our confession. For we do not have a high priest who cannot sympathize with our weaknesses, but was in all points tempted as we are, yet without sin. Let us therefore come boldly to the throne of grace, that we may obtain mercy and find grace to help in time of need. Our God sits on the throne in heaven, and he hears us from this throne, from where he designates and articulates and issues commands that sustains the universe, and the power that he has. In a lot of ways, Revelation 4 for me is a very comforting chapter. It's a very comforting vision, or part of the vision of Revelation that John is being given, because it shows the control that God has. It shows the power that he has, and the fact that nothing is taking place that he's not witnessing, that he's not hearing, and that ultimately God is he's going to always be in control. And so when we pray to God and we ask for help in time of need, Jesus, our high priest, intercedes on our behalf to the Father. And it's just a beautiful reminder that indeed God is worthy to receive glory and honor, because he created all things, and by his will they exist and were created. That's it for the day of the devotional today. Just a thought, just a reminder for when we pray, and when we're maybe feeling down, when we're feeling frustrated, or things are beyond our control, as they almost always are, to remember that there is one who has control over all things, and that it is to him we must take our cares and our worries and our concerns, our anxieties, and give them to him, cast our cares on him, because he cares for us. All right, our next daily devotional, Lord willing, will be tomorrow at 6:30. I hope to see you all then. Thank you, everybody.